Did you know Johnny Depp once made a love confession that absolutely no one expected? Yeah, the man who's usually so private, so mysterious, actually opened up about love in a way that shocked fans. And the wild part? He wasn't talking about fame, scandals, or Hollywood gossip. He was talking about something we can all relate to when love shows up without warning, like fate stepping in. Now, if you've been following Johnny's journey, you know his life hasn't exactly been simple. He's been one of the biggest stars in Hollywood, the face of iconic characters, and someone who's gone through some pretty public ups and downs. People have seen him in court, in headlines, in relationships that played out like a movie script. And yet, even with all of that, he still managed to surprise everyone with a confession about love that felt human, real. Almost like he was saying, hey, underneath all this chaos, I'm just like you. Think about it. Johnny Depp has dated some of the most famous women in the world. Winona Ryder, Vanessa Paradis, Amber Heard. The list goes on. You'd imagine he'd have this big, polished answer when asked about love, right? Maybe something glamorous like, love is finding your soulmate at a Hollywood party. But nope. What he shared was the opposite. He said love isn't something you chase. It isn't something you plan. It's something that finds you when you least expect it. And you know what? That stopped people in their tracks. Because here's this guy who could have anyone saying he doesn't believe in chasing love at all. Instead, he believes in fate. He believes love has its own timing. Now let me ask you this. Have you ever met someone at the exact moment you needed them, even if you didn't realize it right away? Maybe a friend who showed up just when you were at your lowest. Or a partner who entered your life out of nowhere, and it just felt... Right, that's what Johnny was talking about. And suddenly, fans weren't just thinking about him as a celebrity. They were connecting with him on a personal level, but here's where it gets interesting. He didn't say who he was talking about. He never named names. And of course, that set off a storm of speculation. Was he talking about Winona Ryder? Back in the early 90s, they were Hollywood's it couple. Remember the Winona Forever tattoo he famously got? And then later turned into Winona Forever after the breakup? That's one of those moments that's still a part of pop culture. Or was it Vanessa Paradis, the French singer and actress who was with him for over a decade, the mother of his 2 children, and by far one of the longest, most stable relationships in his life? They weren't married, but in so many ways they didn't need a piece of paper. They were just together. Solid, or maybe, and this is where things get messy, maybe he was talking about Amber Heard. Their relationship was passionate, fiery, and very public. But it ended with one of the most talked about celebrity trials of the decade. Some fans think maybe, just maybe, Johnny was hinting that even though things ended badly, love still found him in that moment. But here's the thing. By not saying a name, Johnny left it open. And I think that was the point. It wasn't about one person. It was about the bigger picture. It was about love itself and the way it sneaks up on you. Almost like he wanted fans to reflect on their own experiences, not just speculate about his. And honestly, that's why this confession felt so powerful. Because it wasn't some Hollywood fairy tale. It wasn't about money, fame, or red carpets. It was about those unexpected moments that change everything. Now, people who know Johnny well have said he's always been a believer in serendipity, in those little twists of fate that end up shaping your life. And that's not just in his love life, it's also in his career. Think about it. He didn't plan to become one of the most famous actors in the world. He wasn't even chasing acting at first. He wanted to be a musician. Acting found him. Fame found him. And love, he believes, works the same way. And here's where it hits you. This isn't just a celebrity being poetic. It's Johnny Depp, after decades of heartbreak, mistakes, and lessons, saying, I still believe in love. I still believe in fate. That's huge. Because most people, after going through everything he has, might give up. They might turn bitter. But not him. In one interview in Europe, he even hinted that fate doesn't just bring love. It brings people into your life who teach you something. Sometimes it's joy. Sometimes it's pain. But either way, it's part of the journey. And when you hear that, you can't help but respect the way he looks at life. And maybe that's why fans connect with him so deeply. Because despite the scandals, despite the headlines, He talks about love with this quiet respect, like he's been burned, but he still honors what it gave him. That's rare, especially in Hollywood, where breakups often turn into bitter public fights. So what do you think? Do you believe in fate like Johnny does? Or do you think love is just timing and choice? That's the question he left fans asking. And honestly, it's the kind of question we all have to wrestle with at some point. But here's the best part. This isn't the end of the story. Because Johnny's confession isn't just about looking back. It's also about what might come next. What does fate have in store for him now? And could love find him again when he least expects it? That's where part 2 comes in. Because trust me, there's even more to unpack about Johnny Depp's unexpected confession, the women in his life, and the way fate has shaped not just his love story, but his entire career. So let's pick up where we left off. Johnny Depp's love confession wasn't just about one person or one relationship. It was bigger than that. It was about timing, about fate, about the idea that sometimes love arrives when you're not even looking for it. And to really understand why those words hit so hard, we have to rewind and look at Johnny's journey through love. Because when you see his story laid out, it makes his confession even more powerful. Let's start with Winona Ryder. Back in the early 90s, Johnny and Winona were Hollywood's golden couple. They met at a movie premiere, and for Johnny, it was love at first sight. He once said he looked into her eyes, and in that moment, he knew. That's how sudden it was. And in his own way, he believed fate put her in his path. Their relationship became legendary. Young, beautiful, in love, and the talk of the entire world. And of course, the tattoo, Winona Forever. That one decision showed how deeply he felt. But then just a few years later, it ended. And the heartbreak was so heavy. He changed the tattoo to Winona Forever. Fans laughed at the wordplay, but for Johnny, it was a permanent reminder of how love can change you, and how fate sometimes has a cruel sense of humor. Then came Vanessa Paradis. Now this chapter was different. Vanessa wasn't just a girlfriend. She was a partner, a mother, and someone who grounded him. They spent over a decade together, raising 2 children, and creating a life away from the chaos of Hollywood. For many people, that was Johnny's real, forever love. And maybe that's what makes his confession so believable. Because during those years with Vanessa, Johnny wasn't chasing love. He wasn't out at clubs or caught up in scandals. He was just living. And love, as he said, found him. But love doesn't always stay. After more than 10 years, Johnny and Vanessa went their separate ways. It was a breakup that shook fans, but even then, they spoke respectfully of each other. No drama, no bitterness. Just an acknowledgement that sometimes fate leads you down different paths. Then, of course, there's Amber Heard. This is where the story turns stormy. Their relationship was passionate, fast-moving, and intense. But as the world saw, it ended in one of the most public and painful legal battles in Hollywood history. Now, why does this matter when we're talking about Johnny's confession about fate and love? Because even after all of that, after the heartbreak, the headlines, the accusations, he still believes love is something that finds you. Think about that. Most people would be hardened. Most people would say, I'm done, but not Johnny. His belief in fate, in love arriving unexpectedly, still stands, and that tells you something about him. Underneath the rock star image, the tattoos, the Hollywood fame, he's a romantic, maybe even an eternal one. He might not admit it outright, but everything he said points to a man who refuses to give up on love, no matter how many times it hurts. Now, here's something most people don't know. Johnny has often talked about serendipity, not just in love, but in every corner of his life. And when you take a closer look, it's hard to argue with him. His career itself is the perfect example of fate stepping in at just the right moment. See, Johnny didn't grow up dreaming of being a movie star. He wasn't a kid rehearsing monologues in the mirror or begging his parents to take him to auditions. No, his first love was music. He picked up a guitar when he was just a teenager and fell in love with it instantly. By the time he was in high school, he was already playing in garage bands and imagining a future on stage, not on the big screen. He even dropped out of school at 16 to pursue music full-time. Most people thought he was crazy, but that's who Johnny was, fearless, rebellious, and willing to take risks for what he loved. He played with different bands, moved around, and eventually ended up in Los Angeles with his group, The Kids. They had some local success, opened for bigger acts, and for a while it looked like music was going to be his destiny. But fate had other plans. The band eventually broke up, and Johnny was left struggling to make ends meet. He was doing odd jobs, trying to keep his music alive, but the dream felt like it was slipping away. That's when Nicolas Cage stepped into the picture. Cage and Johnny had a mutual friend, and through that connection, they crossed paths. Nicolas saw something in Johnny, this mix of charisma and intensity, that he thought could work in film. He encouraged him to give acting a try. At first, Johnny laughed it off. Acting wasn't his world. He didn't know the first thing about scripts or auditions. But money was tight, and the thought of trying something new wasn't completely off the table. So Cage introduced him to his agent. And that meeting changed everything. Almost immediately, Johnny was offered a small role in Wes Craven's horror classic, A Nightmare on Elm Street, in 1984. He played Glenn, the boyfriend of the main character, and though it wasn't a huge role, it was unforgettable, especially his death scene, which remains one of the most famous in horror movie history. And just like that, fate had shifted his path. The kid who only wanted to play guitar suddenly had a foot in Hollywood. He didn't plan it, he didn't chase it, it found him. Just like he would later describe with love, acting came into his life at the exact moment he needed it most. From there, the doors kept opening. He got more roles, more recognition, and eventually he became the Johnny Depp the world knows today. But if Nicolas Cage hadn't stepped in, if that introduction hadn't happened, things might have turned out completely different. Maybe Johnny would still be playing music in smoky clubs, or maybe he would have faded into obscurity. But fate had other ideas. That's why when Johnny talks about serendipity, you can tell he means it. His entire career, the fame, the characters, the global recognition, was built on a chance meeting, a random twist of timing. And that's exactly why he says love works the same way. You don't always choose it. Sometimes it just finds you, and when it does, it changes everything. See the pattern? Fate finds him in his career, in his relationships, in the way he looks at life, and maybe that's why his confession feels so authentic. Because he's not just saying it. He's lived it. And when he talks about love, he doesn't frame it as perfect or easy. He frames it as a journey. Sometimes fate brings you happiness. Sometimes it brings you pain. But either way, it teaches you something. And that's exactly what fans connected with. Because who hasn't felt that way? Who hasn't had someone walk into their life, change everything, and then leave you wondering why it happened at all? The beauty of Johnny's confession is that it wasn't a lecture. It wasn't some big, polished Hollywood line. It was raw, simple, almost humble. And that's why people are still talking about it. But here's the part that makes me smile. Even now, fans wonder if fate might have another surprise waiting for Johnny. Could there be another love story in his future? Could fate put someone new in his path? If it does, you can bet it won't be because he's searching. It'll be because, once again, love finds him when he least expects it. And maybe that's the biggest lesson in all of this. Sometimes we get so caught up in chasing, planning, trying to control every detail of our lives that we forget. Some of the best things happen when we're not looking. Johnny's story is proof of that. So here's the question I'll leave with you. Do you believe in fate the way Johnny does? Do you believe love shows up when the timing is right, no matter what? Or do you think it's all about choices and effort? Because at the end of the day, Johnny Depp's confession wasn't just about his life. It was about all of us, about the way love has a funny way of sneaking in, rewriting our plans and reminding us that sometimes fate knows best. And if you want to dive even deeper into Johnny's story, you should check out the video we've got lined up next. It's all about his most surprising Hollywood moments, the ones nobody saw coming. Trust me, you won't want to miss it, so don't forget, hit that like button if you enjoyed this. Drop your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more. Because Johnny's journey isn't just his, it's a reminder that love, life, and fate have a way of surprising us all.